So today I want to talk about common chord tricks that classical music uses to make the chords sound interesting. So I'm going to be building a classical sounding progression bit by bit, adding more and more flavor each time with each new section. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is to pick an open string friendly key to play in. So I'm going to pick E minor. And for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to call that key G major. Since G major is the relative major key for the E minor key, meaning that both of those keys share the same notes. And I'm going to start with a common progression used in classical music, the 6-2-5-1. So it'll go something like... Already sounds kind of classical with the nylon string guitar and finger picking. So here we're just playing bar chords for the 6-2-5-1 chord progression in the key of G major. So that's E minor, A minor, D major, and then A major. Now the first thing we're going to do to make these chords sound more classical is to play them with open strings. Let's see how that sounds. Sounds even closer now, and even easier to play since we're just using the open chords. So the E minor, A minor, D major, and then G major. Next, we're going to go even further by turning these chords into 7th and major 7th chords for the even more classical sound. Now we're getting closer and closer to what we might actually hear on a classical song. So I'm just basically playing the open chord shapes, but with the 7th and major 7th notes in the chords. So here I got E minor 7, and that's pretty much just E minor, but drop the ring finger for E minor 7. And then we got A minor 7, which is again just drop the ring finger. And then we got D7. So here I'm just moving the ring finger down 2 steps, or 1 whole step, for that 7th note. And then finally we got G major 7. It's just G major, but I drop this note on the high E string down 1 fret for the major 7 sound. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A common trick used in both jazz and classical music is to play the chords closer together so they sound really smooth when played back to back. So I'm going to play the exact same chords, but play them in different positions so they're physically closer together. Let's see how that sounds. Now that's sounding really classical. So we start off with this really cool E minor 7 chord. So it's basically just, you can think of it as the G major bar chord shape, except we only keep the top 3 strings. And then we play the open E string as the bass note. And after that we got this cool A minor 7 chord, which is similar idea. So we play, let's say, we think of it as the C major bar shape chord. And then we'll only keep the top 3 strings. Play the open A string as the bass note. After that we got this interesting D7 chord. It's pretty much just the open D chord, except we move this note on the index finger, the 5th note of the chord, up 1.5 steps. For the 7th note, play the open D string still. And then finally we got this standard G major 7 chord shape. So that's pretty much just the G major bar chord. And we keep the bass note and the top 3 strings. And we move this note on the high E string, the 1 note of the chord, down 1/2 step to the major 7 chord, major 7 note. I made a more in-depth video about how we can play chords closer together for this kind of jazzier, more classical sound using a pentatonic trick. So check it out if you're interested. To finish off the progression, I'm gonna add a classical turnaround, no pun intended. So that would be the 4-7-3 chords, leading back to the 6th chord that we start off with, the E minor chord. So the 4-7-3 chords of a key has the same interval or distance between the chords as the 2-5-1 chord progression in jazz. It's just a really classic, awesome sounding progression or turnaround. In terms of the movement of the bass notes of the 4-7-3 chords, it will look like this. So 4, 7, 3, and then 6. So we kind of start off on a note, the 4 note, and then we move diagonally up to the left before dropping down, and then diagonally up to the left again. Let's see how this sounds. So for the final turnaround, we start off with this cool C major 7 chord. It's really just the open C chord, except we move the open G note, which is the 5 note in the chord, up 2 steps for this major 7 note and chord. And then we have this super cool F sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord. So in classical music, it's common to play the 7th chord of a key, in this case F sharp in the key of G, as a minor 7 flat 5 chord. So it's the root note, F sharp, and then the minor 3 note, A, and then flat 5 note, B, finally minor 7 note, the E. After that, we come down to the 3 chord of the key, the B7 chord. So usually the 3 chord of a key is a minor chord, but in classical music, it's common to play the 3 chord of a key as a major chord to give it some extra kind of suspense. On top of that, we're also playing it as a B7 chord, not just a regular major chord. So it's some extra flair. And we also don't just play the chord as it is. To start off with, we move the pinky up for this B7 sus4 chord first, and then transition into the regular B7 chord for a kind of smoother sound as we go into this chord. Yet another common trick in classical music, kind of playing the sus4 version of a chord first, before doing the regular version for a smoother transition. Finally, we end up back on the first chord of the progression, the 6th chord, the E minor chord. And since the E minor chord mostly contains open strings on the guitar, we can actually drop in some harmonics on the 12th fret for some extra flavor. Now let's add this turnaround to the entire chord progression and see how that sounds. As we were saying, it's common in classical music to use 7th and major 7th chords with open strings and play them close together for a sick mellow sound. If you're interested in learning more about other cool chords in popular genres, check out this video where I talk about the most used chords in lo-fi music. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.